The 250 job interview questions you'll most likely be asked, and the answers that will get you hired. By Peter Veruki. Read by Peter Veruki, Ken Cleban, and Nona Pipes. Engineered by Pete Pantelis, edited by Kirk Miller, and produced by Elisa Weberman and Alfred Martino. This is a Listen and Live audio production.
Part 1. Before the Job Interview. Chapter 1. Preparing for the Interview. Too many job seekers jump right into a full-scale job search without much advanced preparation other than putting together a resume. A serious mistake. Although your resume may get you job interviews, to win job offers, you must prepare yourself further. It's vitally important to distinguish yourself in some positive way from other candidates vying for the same position. One way of accomplishing this is by developing several themes that you continually refer to throughout the job interview. This enables you to emphasize your strongest points and ensures that you'll leave a positive impression in the recruiter's mind. Developing your personal themes for the job interview. There are 12 types of information recruiters seek in a typical job interview. Knowing what these points are and being able to discuss readily how each point relates to you will make you better prepared and more in control of the interviewing process. Think of your 12 themes as sales messages. Each is designed to showcase your best skills and qualifications. Together, they make up a 12-point strategy that will enable you to sell your qualifications in virtually any interview situation. Listen to the following 12 topics. Develop a personalized approach to each and practice talking about it. Think of specific examples in your background that correspond to each topic. You can't possibly be prepared for every situation, but once you've developed your 12 key messages, you'll be able to apply them to almost any interview question you face. Number 1. Passion for the business. Ask yourself, why am I interested in working in this field, in this industry? Do you feel a passion for the business? If so, why? Give specific examples of the things that excite you. These could be anything from enjoying the challenge of meeting increasingly higher sales goals to a sense of satisfaction derived from developing a product from the creation stage to the final production. Offer personal experience where possible. Number 2. Motivation and purpose. Interviewers will want to know why you want to work for this particular company. Ask yourself, why do I want this interview? Don't simply repeat your resume and employment history. What's the most compelling case you can make to prove your interest? Number 3. Skills and experience. Consider your key skills and how you'll use them in this job. Avoid cliches and generalities. Instead, offer specific evidence. Think about your weaknesses and how you can minimize and balance them with your strengths. Try to describe yourself as objectively as possible. Avoid sounding arrogant or defensive. Number 4. Diligence and professionalism. Describe your professional character, including thoroughness, diligence, and accountability. Give proof that you persevere to see important projects through and that you achieve desired results. Demonstrate how you gather resources, how you predict obstacles, and how you manage stress. Number 5. Creativity and leadership. Offer proof of your effectiveness, including creativity, initiative, resourcefulness, and leadership. What examples can you provide for each? Focus on how you overcome problems, how you take advantage of opportunities that might otherwise be overlooked, and how you rally the support of others to accomplish goals. Number 6. Compatibility with the job. Discuss your specific qualifications for the job. How well do they fit the requirements of the position? Your answer should describe both positive and negative aspects of recent jobs without dwelling on the negatives. Conclude by focusing on what you're seeking in your next job. keep in mind that your response should match closely the position you're applying for. Number 7. Personality and cultural compatibility. Consider your personality on the job. How do you fit in with other types of personalities? What types of people would enjoy working with you for hours at a time? How would the company's customers or clients react to you? Your goal is to develop responses that make the interviewer feel confident there won't be any surprises about your personality on the job. Number 8. Management style and interpersonal skills. Talk about the management style and the interpersonal skills you use with peer groups and leaders. Focus on how you work rather than on what type of work you do well. What kind of boss, colleague, and employee will you be? Give personal or popular examples of leaders you believe are effective. Why are those people able to accomplish so much? Number 9. Problem-solving ability. Offer proof with examples of your problem-solving ability. How have you resolved difficult issues in the past? Are you practical in how you apply technical skills? Are you realistic? Focus on real issues, on logical value-added solutions, on practical outcomes of your work, and on realistic measures of judging these outcomes. Number 10. Accomplishments. Think about your initiative and accomplishments. Offer examples in which you've delivered more than what was expected. Don't give long descriptions of situations. Instead, focus your answer on the action you took and the positive results you obtained. If you were hired, what situations would you handle especially well? What can you contribute to the organization? Number 11. Career aspirations. Tailor your aspirations to the realities of this particular job and its career path. Avoid listing job titles or offering unrealistic performance deadlines. Instead, reiterate the skills and strengths you want to develop further. Do you want cross-functional experience, a larger budget, or more supervisory responsibility? Why would you be effective with that additional experience? Number 12. Personal interests and hobbies. Do you have a balanced lifestyle? Is your personality reflected in the type of job you choose as well as the outside activities you pursue? Are your personal and career interests compatible? The interviewer will also be interested in your community involvement. How would you reflect the company's image? After you feel comfortable with your 12 sales messages, develop them in a brief summary. This is a useful tool that you can use effectively at the end of the interview, when the interviewer says something like, "Is there anything else you'd like to tell me?" Never let an interview end without summarizing your 12 key messages. The 60-second pitch. Another good preparation technique is the 60-second pitch. Approximately 1 week after you've sent your resume to a key decision maker, you should follow up with a phone call. Don't simply ask if your resume has been received. This can be frustrating to employers who are inundated with hundreds of resumes. A better approach is to state that you've sent your resume and explain, in 60 seconds or less, why you think you're the best candidate for the position. Your 60-second pitch should be a clear and concise summary of yourself, including 3 important elements: what kind of work you do or want to do, what your strongest skills and accomplishments are, and what kind of position you're seeking. If you're invited to an interview after you've pitched yourself to the hiring manager, great. If not, don't let it end there. Ask if there are any particular qualifications that he or she is looking for in a candidate. Is there anything else you can do or any additional information that you can send? Writing samples, clippings, a portfolio, to help the hiring manager make a decision. If the person says no, he or she may be impressed by your interest and enthusiasm. If you haven't already done so, specifically ask the employer if he or she would have a few minutes to meet with you. If that doesn't work, ask if that person knows anyone who might be interested in speaking to someone with your qualifications. If you're unable to arrange an interview or to get a referral, ask the employer if he or she would mind if you call back in a month or so. The goal is to get a positive response from the phone call, whether it's an interview or simply a bit of job hunting advice. Don't give up too easily, but be professional and courteous at all times. Researching potential employers. There are two good reasons why you should set aside some time early in your job search to research companies in your field of interest. First, it's a great way to locate potential employers. Second, it's an effective way to learn more about companies you're considering working for. Researching potential employers can be time-consuming, but it's well worth the effort. To use your time effectively, however, you should divide your research into two distinct phases. The first phase should involve gathering only basic information about many different companies, including company name, address, phone, and fax numbers, name and job titles of key contacts, whether the company is privately or publicly held, products and/or services, year of incorporation, number of employees. The second phase of research begins as you start scheduling job interviews. This involves gathering more detailed information about each company you're interviewing with. Your goal is to be able to walk into an interview knowing the organization inside and out. You need to know the company's products, type of customers, subsidiaries, parent company, principal locations, rank in the industry, sales and profit trends, type of ownership, size, current plans, principal competitors, and their relative performance, and much more. Incorporating this knowledge into your discussions is certain to impress the toughest of interviewers and will distinguish you from the competition. The more time you spend on this phase, the better prepared you'll be. Even if you feel extremely pressed for time, you must set aside at least 12 hours for pre-interview research. The informational interview. If you're an entry-level job seeker or a career changer, you should consider conducting at least one informational interview. An informational interview is simply a meeting that you arrange to talk to someone in a field, industry, or company that interests you. To set up an informational appointment, request a meeting with someone who has several years' experience working in your field of interest. Your goal is to learn how that person got into the business, what he or she likes about it, and what kind of advice someone with experience might pass on to someone who's interested in entering the field. Tell your contact right away that you'd like to learn more about the industry or the company, and that you'll be the one asking the questions. Most people won't feel threatened, especially if you assure them that you're not asking them for a job, and they'll usually be inclined to help you. If you tell a contact that all you want is advice, make sure you mean it. Never approach an informational interview as though it were a job interview. Just stick to gathering information and leads and see what happens. Also, unless specifically requested to do so, sending your resume to someone you'd like to meet for an informational interview will probably give the wrong impression. Conducting informational interviews. Now that you've scheduled an informational interview, make sure you're prepared to take the lead. After all, you're the one doing the interviewing, not vice versa. Prepare a list of 10 to 20 questions such as, how did you get started in this business? What are your primary responsibilities in your current job? What do you like most about your job, or your company, or your industry? What do you dislike most about them? What's been your greatest challenge? What are typical career path options from here? What advice would you give to someone looking for a job in the industry? Is there anything else I should know about the industry? Do you know of anyone who might be looking for someone with my qualifications? Is there anything you think I should have brought up, but didn't, that should be a consideration? Always end by thanking the person and promising to follow up on any important leads he or she has provided, and to let the person know how things turn out. You should also send a thank you note within 1 or 2 days of the informational interview. Follow up periodically with everyone in your network, even after you get a job. Once you develop a network, it's important not to lose those contacts. You want to translate your informational network into a support network and maintain it throughout your career. Preparing for telephone interviews. Telephone screening interviews are becoming more commonplace because companies want to reduce their hiring costs by avoiding travel at screening stages and interviews. Using phone interviews, recruiters can quickly weed out most candidates and decide on the best candidates to pursue for a face-to-face interview. This is when developing a 60-second pitch can also come in handy. Here's why planning for a telephone interview is so important. Unlike a planned first interview, for which you have done all the preparation already discussed, a telephone interview can come at any time and from any company. Also, once you begin to network, a phone interview may result when all you expected was possible leads. Sometimes recruiters will call to schedule an interview at a later time, but more often they'll call hoping to interview you on the spot. Here are some general tips for handling a phone interview. If you feel unprepared or uncomfortable with your phone skills, practice with a friend, role play, and ask a friend to question you over the phone. Also, you can make good use of your answering machine here. Always be prepared with your 12 themes ready to go. The basic guidelines of a screening interview apply here as well. Keep a copy of your resume by the phone, along with a list of keywords representing the themes you think are relevant to the industry or job category you're pursuing. You can't count on clues from an interviewer's body language, eye contact, or other such signs. You'll have to pay close attention instead to their voice pattern, and you must use your own voice, simple, direct, enthusiastic responses, to keep the conversation interesting and easy to follow. Listen very carefully and maintain your highest level of concentration. Have a phone set up where you can sit more or less as you'd sit for an interview. Keep a pen and some paper near the phone, along with your resume and notes. Take very careful notes about what you're asked and what seemed most critical to the recruiter. This information will help you follow up later with a letter. Avoid long pauses. Provide quick summaries of your key themes or points with clear examples of how you've made positive contributions where you've been and how you could contribute to this company. Make sure you get the name, spelled correctly, number and address of the person who called. Reaffirm your interest if you're interested after this first round. Find out what happens next and what you can do to make yourself competitive. Follow up with a thank you note just as you would for a screening interview. Your goal is to get face-to-face in the next round. Collecting references. At some point before you start interviewing, you'll need to prepare a list of 3 to 5 references. Unless you're new to the workforce, at least 2 of these should be professional references from previous employers or close business associates. Other potential sources of references include teachers, professors, volunteer committee heads, and friends who are well respected in business circles. Don't list family members as references. Be sure to ask people for their permission before you cite them as references. If they agree, be sure you have their job title, the name of their company where they work, and work address and phone number. Then prepare a neat typed list of your reference contacts with your name at the top of the page. You should make several copies and have them on hand during your job interviews. Don't make the mistake of listing your references on your resume, as this is commonly considered inappropriate and unprofessional. Don't forget to send each of your references a thank you note when your job search is over. Proper etiquette aside, this practice will help keep your contacts current. You never know when you might need their help again, sometime down the road. Chapter 2. Setting the Right Tone. You're on your way to a job interview. By now, you've probably spent a great deal of time preparing. However, you must not let your practice and preparation become a disadvantage. Once the interview begins, you must focus on interacting effectively with the interviewer, as opposed to trying to recall precisely the responses you practiced earlier. If you've prepared for the interview, Your conduct and responses should easily convey to the interviewer the image you want to project. It's important for you to know that the recruiter's decision about whether or not you'll be invited back for an additional interview will probably be influenced by your attitude and personality as much as by your qualifications. So although preparation is important, your performance during the interview can make an even greater difference. Generally, you should try to stress the following qualities in your choice of words, your tone of voice, and your body language: capability, confidence, dependability, easygoing manner, enthusiasm, flexibility, resourcefulness, strong work ethic. A word of caution: don't concentrate too much on trying to project the perfect image. Just try to relax. Visualize yourself as smooth and confident, and you'll almost certainly do well. What to have on hand. A briefcase or leather-bound folder, if you have one, will help to complete the professional, polished look you want to achieve. Women should avoid carrying a purse if they plan on carrying a briefcase. It may detract from a professional image. And don't forget to wear a watch. Before leaving for the interview, be sure that you have good directions and the phone numbers and names of the people you'll be meeting with. You should also bring the following items with you to the interview: several unfolded copies of your resume and cover letter, a notepad and pen for taking notes during the interview, your list of professional references, examples of your work such as writing samples or clippings, taking care that these don't breach the confidentiality of previous employers. Body language. The first minutes of the interview are most important. A recruiter begins sizing up your potential the instant you walk into the room. If you make a bad impression from the start, you may be ruled out immediately, and the interviewer may pay little attention to your performance during the rest of the interview. An excellent initial impression, on the other hand, will put a favorable glow on everything else you say during the rest of the interview, and could well encourage the recruiter to ask less demanding questions. How can you ensure that you make a terrific first impression? The easiest answer is to be sure you're dressed well. When the recruiter meets you, he or she will notice your clothes and grooming first. Nothing other than impeccable grooming is acceptable. Your attire must be professional and squeaky clean. Your body language will also speak volumes, even before you and the interviewer exchange a word. Any recruiter will unconsciously pick up and react to the subtle signals of body language. Here are some important things to think about. Do you smile when you meet? Do you make just enough eye contact without staring at the recruiter? Do you walk into the office with a self-assured and confident stride? Do you shake hands firmly? Do you remember the recruiter's name and pronounce it with confidence? Do you make small talk easily, or do you act formal and reserved, as though under attack? It's human nature to judge people by that first impression, so make sure yours is a good one. But most of all, be yourself. Overcoming nervousness. As if formulating solid answers to interview questions isn't tough enough, you'll also have to overcome a quite natural and inevitable nervousness. Most employers won't think less of a job candidate for a bit of nervous behavior, but they will pay close attention to how you hold up under pressure. Displaying excessive nervousness can easily eliminate you from further consideration. One good way to overcome pre-interview jitters is to exercise positive thinking. If you're feeling nervous about an upcoming interview, imagine in detail what the experience will be like. Think of what you'll say, the questions you'll be asked, and how you'll answer them. Picture yourself responding calmly, effectively, and in a controlled manner. This type of mental rehearsing won't guarantee success, but it should help you feel more optimistic and self-confident, which will undoubtedly enhance your final presentation. Above all, you should practice interviewing as much as you can. You'll become more confident, and your answers will become more polished with each interview you have. Chapter 3. Interview Strategies. Navigating the dynamics of interview conversation. All your preparation should be evident when the conversation gets going. Make sure your tone remains conversational. Don't let the interview turn into an interrogation. Start by thanking the interviewer for the opportunity to talk with him or her and explain up front why you're interested in the position. Be ready to answer and to ask questions, including occasionally asking the interviewer for his or her own perspective on a subject. After small talk, the interviewer may well begin by telling you about the company, the division, the department, or perhaps the position. Because of your detailed research, information about the company should be already familiar to you. The interviewer will probably like nothing better than to avoid this regurgitation of company history, so if you can do so tactfully, indicate that you're very familiar with the firm already. If the interviewer seems determined to provide you with background information despite your hints, then listen carefully. If you can manage to initiate a brief, appropriate discussion of the company or industry at this point, that's great. It'll help you to build rapport, underscore your interest, and increase your impact. Soon the interviewer will begin to ask you questions. This period of the interview may be structured or unstructured, or somewhere in between. In a structured interview, the interviewer asks a prescribed set of questions, seeking relatively brief answers. In the unstructured interview, the interviewer asks more open-ended questions to prod you into giving longer responses and revealing as much as possible about yourself, your background, and your aspirations. Try to determine as quickly as possible which direction the interviewer is going, and respond to the questions accordingly. As you answer the questions, watch for signals from the employer as to whether your responses are too short or too long. Following the style the interviewer establishes will make the interview easier and more comfortable and will help you make a more favorable impression. Once you begin to feel more confident about interviewing, you may wish to think strategically about each interview. One effective tactic is to adjust your speed of speech to match that of the interviewer. People tend to talk at the speed at which they like to be spoken to. If you can adjust your speech rate to that of the recruiter without sounding unnatural, the recruiter will probably feel more comfortable and have a more favorable impression of you. Another strategy is to adapt your answers to match the type of company for which you're interviewing. For example, if you're interviewing for a job at a large product marketing company that emphasizes group decision-making and spends much of its energy focused on battles for market share with its competitors, you might want to talk about how much you enjoy team sports, especially being part of a team and competing to win. Concentrate on the themes you've developed in Chapter 1 and be alert for opportunities to mention them. Draw parallels between your experience and the demands of the position, as described by the interviewer. Talk about your past experience, emphasizing results and achievements, and not merely recounting activities. If you listen carefully, the interviewer might very well give you an idea of the skills needed for the position. Don't exaggerate. Be honest about your abilities. Try not to be negative about anything during the interview, especially about any past employer or previous job. Be cheerful. Everyone likes to work with someone who seems to be happy. Don't let a tough question throw you off base. If you don't know the answer to a question, simply say so. Don't apologize. Just smile. Nobody can answer every question, particularly some of the questions that are asked in job interviews. Try not to cover too much ground during the first interview. This interview, in which many candidates are screened out, is often the toughest. If you're interviewing for a very competitive position, you'll have to make an impression that will last. Focus on a few of your greatest strengths that are relevant to the position. Develop these points carefully, state them again in different words, then try to summarize them briefly at the end of the interview. Above all else, keep the conversation flowing. Don't talk too much or too little. Watch the recruiter for signals. A job interview is a conversation between two people who are hoping to discover they have a common interest. Move around if you have to so that you don't appear stiff, but do not fidget. Try to appear relaxed, enthusiastic, and determined, all at the same time. The first interview. The first interview is often a screening interview conducted by a human resources department representative or an employment interviewer. The types of questions are general in nature, rarely specific to the technical aspects of the job. The primary purpose of the first interview is to determine qualities like motivation, industry or functional skills, work ethic, communication skills, and critical thinking skills. You should communicate genuine interest in the job, the industry, and the city or region of the country if relocation is part of the package. You need to demonstrate compatibility with the company culture and show that you can sell that compatibility in subsequent interviews if the recruiter moves you to the next round in the process. Recruiters are always concerned about weeding out any candidate who might embarrass them in a second interview. They must believe that they really got to know you and that you won't present any surprises in subsequent interviews. After all, their reputation and judgment are on the line if they recommend you for a second interview. Strategies for later interviews. When filling professional career positions, few companies will make a job offer after only one interview. Usually, the purpose of the first interview is to narrow the field of applicants to a small number of very promising candidates. During the first meeting, the ideal strategy is to stand out from a large field of competitors in a positive way. The best way to do this is to emphasize subtly one or two of your key strengths as much as possible throughout the interview. During later interviews, the competition for the position will drop off, and employers will tend to look not for strengths, but for weaknesses. At this point, you should focus on presenting yourself as a well-balanced choice for the position. Listen carefully to the interviewer's questions so that you can determine his or her underlying concerns and try to dispel them. On the other hand, if later interviews are primarily with people who are in a position to veto your hiring but not push it forward, you should focus primarily on building rapport as opposed to reiterating and developing your key strengths. Another way in which second interviews differ from first interviews is that the questions become much more specific and technical. The company must now test the depth of your knowledge of the field, including how well you're able to apply your education and past work experience to the job at hand. At this stage, the interviewer isn't a recruiter. Typically, these interviewers will represent your potential boss, professional peer group, or executives who oversee the work group. The second round of interviews can last 1 to 2 days, during which you might meet a few people or as many as 15 or more over the course of the visit. These interviews typically last longer than initial interviews. For many executive positions, you may also have meetings around breakfast, lunch, or dinner. In all cases, remember you're still in an interview. You may be having a dinner conversation about a recent topic of concern to the industry as a whole. Be ready with opinions and be equally ready to listen and to ask good questions. You may be asked to demonstrate how you'd go about performing some aspect of the job. Be ready in case you're presented with a tough problem and asked to tackle it as though you already started your first day on the job. Use what you said in the screening interview as an outline, but be prepared to build on this outline in meaningful ways with more developed details, examples, and ideas. Turning the tables. Often the interviewer will pause toward the end and ask if you have any questions. Particularly in a structured interview, this might be the one chance to communicate your knowledge of and interest in the firm. Have a list prepared of specific questions that are of real interest to you. Let your questions subtly show your research and your knowledge of the firm's activities. What questions should you ask? Here are some examples. What position or positions does this job typically lead to? Assuming I was hired and performed well for a number of years, what additional opportunities might this job lead to? I've noticed in the trade press that your firm has a terrific reputation in marketing. What are the major insights into the marketing process that I might gain from this position? What skills are considered most useful for success in the job I'm applying for? I'd really like to work for your firm. I think it's a great company, and I'm confident I could do this job well. What's the next step of the selection process? Be sure to save your questions about salary, benefits, and related issues for later, after you receive an offer. You'll still be free to negotiate or to decline the position. Also, avoid asking questions that will be difficult or awkward for the recruiter to answer. For example, this is not an appropriate time to ask, does your company use recycled paper for all of its advertising brochures? A final note. Interviewing is like almost everything else. The more you do it, the better you become. Don't expect to give a perfect performance, especially in your first few interviews. Even experienced professionals who haven't interviewed in a while are bound to be rusty. And if you have a terrible interview, don't let it shake your confidence. Remember, everyone has a bad interview experience sooner or later. Learn from it. Work on your performance and keep looking for other opportunities. Part 2. The top 250 questions. Chapter 4. The basic interview questions. Okay, now you're ready to start practicing your interview questions. The following are among the most commonly asked questions in interviews today. If you can manage to get a good handle on these, you'll breeze through your interviews and really stand out from the crowd. Chances are that a vast majority of the questions you'll be asked in a typical job interview appear in the next 2 chapters. But you may be asked a variation of one of our questions with different wording. Just remember as you work your way through the next sections that you're not trying to memorize the answers. Instead, you're trying to respond to interview questions in a way that will convey that you're someone the employer would want to hire. In other words, project yourself as someone who's likely to stay with the company for a number of years, who's achievement-oriented, who will fit in well with other employees, and who's likable. Of course, you should also try to present yourself as someone who's capable of performing extremely well in the position. You should avoid giving generic answers like, I'm a people person, or I have excellent written and oral communication skills. Your response should always be specific, with supporting examples, and it should relate specifically to the job, the industry, or other personal factors to help your answer stand out. Particularly in screening interviews, where generic questions are often asked, recruiters are looking to eliminate the average respondent. You can't afford a predictable, nondescript response. You must turn a common question into a memorable answer. Go through the practice interview questions in the next 2 chapters. At first, you may wish to listen to sample responses and the accompanying discussion. Later, as you begin to feel more comfortable with the questions, try answering them without any help, as you would during a real interview. Number 1. Passion for the business. Why do you want to work in this industry?
I've always wanted to work in an industry that makes tools. One of my hobbies is home improvement projects, so I've collected a number of saws manufactured by your company. I could be an accountant anywhere, but I'd rather work for a company whose products I trust.
Tell a story about how you first became interested in this type of work. Point out any similarities between the job you're interviewing for and your current or most recent job. Provide proof that you aren't simply shopping in this interview. Make your passion for your work a theme that you allude to continually throughout the interview. Why would you be particularly good at this business?
I was a pastry chef, so I understand dessert products well and can help you with new product development. Recent preservatives have come a long way toward eliminating texture difference in pastry dough. This means we can investigate many more products than before.
Show how you keep up due to natural curiosity, reading, and so on. Do you have sufficient natural interest to go that extra step and channel appropriate energy into your work? Give a specific answer. How do you stay current?
I pore over the Wall Street Journal, the Times, Institutional Investor, and several mutual fund newsletters. And I have a number of friends who are analysts.
Demonstrate natural interest in the industry or career field by describing publications or trade associations in your field. Where do you want to be in 5 years?
I'd like to have the opportunity to work in a plant as well as at the home office. I also hope to develop my management skills, perhaps by managing a small staff.
Don't give specific time frames or job titles. Talk about what you enjoy, skills that are natural to you, problems or opportunities you'd expect in your chosen field or industry, and what you hope to learn from these experiences. Don't discuss your goals in a field or industry unrelated to the jobs you're applying for. This may sound obvious, but too many job candidates make this mistake, demonstrating a real lack of interest in their current field or industry. Needless to say, such a gaffe will immediately eliminate you from further consideration. Describe your ideal career.
I'd like to stay in a field related to training no matter what happens. I was too interested in business to work at a university, but I believe that teaching is somehow in my blood. I've been good at sales because I took the time to educate my clients. Now I look forward to training the new hires.
Talk about what you enjoy, skills that are natural to you, realistic problems or opportunities you'd expect in this particular job or industry, and what you hope to learn from these job experiences. Avoid mentioning specific time frames or job titles. Number 2, motivation and purpose. Tell me something about yourself that I didn't know from reading your resume.
You wouldn't know that I've managed my own small portfolio since I was 16, but I believe that it's important for you to understand my interest in investment sales. I've averaged a 12% return over the past 8 years.
Don't just repeat what's on your resume. Think of a talent or a skill that didn't quite fit into your employment history, but that's unique and reveals something intriguing about your personality or past experience. Why do you want to work here?
I lost a bid several years ago to your company. I realized then that products in the computer industry are becoming increasingly similar. They're so similar now, and retail prices are so competitive that service is the best way for a company to distinguish itself from the competition. This company has the best service record of all its competitors, and I believe it will dominate the business in the long run.
Your preparation and research should become apparent here. Give 1 or 2 reasons why you're interested in the company, and what in particular piqued your interest. What's the most compelling thing you can describe about your personal experience with the company, its products, or its employees? Possible answers include the company's reputation, the job description itself, or a desire to get involved with the industry. What do you think of our newest product and ads?
It seems that your new ads are trying to show that breakfast time is family time, with a certain wholesomeness. Are you doing this to balance against the recent bad press about high-fat foods without attacking the issue directly?
You should be familiar enough with the company's new products and advertising campaigns to make informed, intelligent comments about them. Offer specific suggestions and positive comments. Tell me what you think are distinctive advantages within the industry.
With your low-cost producer status and headquarters operation in a low-cost area of the country, you seem in a better position to be able to spend aggressively on R&D, even in a down year, compared to your closest rival.
Describe things you believe the company does very well, particularly compared to its competition. Explain how the financial strength of the company is important. Where do you think we're the most vulnerable as a business?
Your cash position and strong product presence make you an attractive target for a takeover. That's my only major concern. I've already worked for one organization that merged with another, but I also know I can weather the storm.
Describe things you believe the company does not do well compared to its competition. Explain how the company's financial strength is important. If you have a passion for the business, the future opportunities are always on your mind. What would you do differently if you ran the company?
I might investigate whether to sell off the light manufacturing businesses and start an aggressive supplier relations program.
In a constructive way, demonstrate that you have enough knowledge about the business to answer this question convincingly. One way to gain such knowledge is by talking to a number of company insiders, which is why this question can quickly weed out the shoppers from more serious job candidates. You can also turn the question around. Ask for the recruiter's ideas, too. You might learn something valuable. What other firms are you interviewing with, and for what positions?
Actually, I've definitely decided to pursue a career as a restaurant manager, so I'm applying only for restaurant management training programs. I've recently had interviews with several other large national fast food chains, such as Superburger and Clacky's Chicken.
Often the candidate will try to impress the employer by naming some other large firms in unrelated industries with completely different types of jobs. This is a big mistake. What employers want to hear is that you're interviewing for similar jobs in the same industry at similar firms, such as their competitors. This illustrates that you're committed to finding a job in your field of interest and are likely to be a low-risk hire. Describe our competition as you see it.
Most of your competitors have tried to do too many things. As a result, most have had difficulty expanding and maintaining consistent quality.
Give evidence that you've researched the company and industry carefully and acquired more than superficial knowledge. Point out positive and/or negative aspects of the company's competitors. Discuss how the company's initiatives are better suited to your personal interests. What would you do if one of our competitors offered you a position?
I'd say no. I'm not interested in other players in this industry. I want to work for Nike because I won a number of races wearing the Nike brand. Because of my positive experience with Nike, I know I'd be convincing selling your product to retailers.
The interviewer is trying to determine whether the candidate is truly interested in the industry and company, or whether he or she has chosen the company randomly. Contrast your perceptions of the company with its competitors, and talk about the company's products or services that you've encountered. In the long run, which players do you believe are the most viable and why? This is also a good place to ask the interviewer for his or her opinion. Why are you ready to leave your current job?
My interest lies in returning to the banking industry. I can work in human resources management in many environments, but I believe that my experience as a lender prepares me exceptionally well for recruiting new lenders into the training program.
Give 2 or 3 reasons why you're ready to leave your current job. Focus on limitations in growth or lack of challenge in your current job. Make sure you point out why you believe the position you're interviewing for would provide the challenge and additional responsibilities that you desire.